Hi, I'm Fana. I'm 29 and I live in Moscow with my husband and young son. I seem like a successful woman with a happy family and a stable job, but I've got secrets I've never shared. Today I'm opening up and telling my life story. It's a journey full of pain, mistakes, and desires I never thought I'd have. It's not just about the past, it's about confronting my true self and the mistakes that it has caused me a lot of pain and conflict. I'm not looking for sympathy or forgiveness. I just want to find some peace of mind through this story and hope that it will touch a corner of your heart. So, if you are willing, join me in a story that I have never dared to tell. A story that I have not forgiven myself for. My childhood began with a tragedy. It was a deep cut in my soul that I will never forget. That year I was only 7 years old. I was an innocent girl who believed that this world was full of joy and laughter. My family, my father, mother, 4-year-old brother, and I decided to travel together to a small town near Moscow. It was a seemingly normal vacation, but it turned out to be the last time we were together. I still clearly remember the gentle sunlight shining through the car window that day, my brother's crisp laughter as he told innocent stories, my mother's gentle eyes as she looked down at us, and my father sitting in the front, firmly controlling the steering wheel. Gave a little smile now and then when he heard jokes. I felt safe and like nothing could hurt my family. But on the way back, a storm blew in. Everything changed in an instant. I remember the screeching of brakes and the deafening sounds of metal clashing. When I woke up, I was surrounded by disinfectant and the cold white light of the hospital. A nurse looked down at me. She had eyes filled with compassion. At the time, I didn't understand what was happening. I knew what was going on, but I soon realized that my parents and younger brother weren't there when the doctor came to the bedside and told me they'd passed away. I felt like my strength was gone, like my world had collapsed. I couldn't understand the pain of loss, I only felt a strange emptiness, as if something important had been gone forever. But when I went back to the house, which had once been warm and full of laughter, it really hit me that there was no more mom to greet me at the door. No more little brother running to show me his doodles. No more dad sitting in the chair reading a book every evening. The rooms that were once filled with warmth became cold and terrifyingly silent. I lay in bed staring at the dark ceiling and for the first time realized that my life had completely changed. No one was there to guide me or hug me when I cried. My childhood from that moment on was no longer a sunny road but a long lonely journey with a pain that never faded. After the accident, I was adopted by my grandparents and moved to live with them in a small apartment in the center of Moscow. The apartment wasn't big, but it was always cozy, with the sound of the radio playing classical music and the aroma of Kamal tea that my grandfather made every morning. My grandparents did everything they could to fill my life with love and care. My grandfather told me stories from his youth, and my grandmother made me the most beautiful sweaters in the winter. They always tried to make me feel that way. I still had a family, but no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't fill the void in my heart. Their love was like a soft cloth covering the wound, but the wound remained there, burning, unable to heal. I had lost more than just my loved ones. I had lost the sense that the world was a safe place since I was a child. Loneliness had become a part of me, like a silent companion that I couldn't leave behind. There were nights when everything was quiet. I lay in bed, looking out the narrow window. I looked out at the dim yellow lights of the city and wondered why I was the only one who survived. Was it a gift or a punishment from fate? Either way, I was forced to live with this pain and emptiness forever. I felt like a stranger to my own life, even though my grandparents always tried to make up for it. I still felt lost among people. It felt like my life had been put together with pieces that couldn't be put together. From the moment of the accident, it seemed like my life was a journey associated with pain. I was just a helpless witness to my own loss. As time passed, I grew up putting on a strong shell to hide the deep wounds inside. People around me often said that I was a strong, independent girl, but they didn't know that inside me were countless cracks and fragments of a childhood torn apart by tragedy. I learned to keep my balance on the stormy surface of life. I was always a bit wobbly on my feet, but I kept going. When I reached adulthood, I knew I couldn't live under my grandparents' protection forever. I needed to find my own path, even though I knew it would be difficult. After a lot of thought and a few struggles, I decided to apply to Balmain Moscow State Technical University, one of Russia's top universities. It wasn't an easy choice. I didn't know anyone at school, I didn't have any connections, and the learning environment there was challenging. It was known to be extremely tough, but I didn't let myself back down. I wanted to prove that I could stand on my own 2 feet and that I wasn't a weak person stuck in the pain of the past. This was not only a decision about studying, but also an affirmation to myself that I could change my fate and overcome the limits that life had set for me. The first days at university were not pleasant. I was lost among strange faces in the long corridors with the hustle and bustle of life. The pressure of studying every evening, returning to my small rented room, I sat alone feeling like I was fighting the whole world. Instead of letting the loneliness overwhelm me, I turned it into motivation. I told myself that I had come this far and I could not give up. Every time I passed a difficult exam or completed a project, I felt a small ray of hope in my heart. Gradually, I began to believe that although I could not erase the old wounds, I could still build a new future. I was able to move on from the past at university. I met Andrei, who was immediately striking. He was tall, handsome, with bright eyes and a confident smile. But what impressed me most was his intelligence and composure. Andrei was unlike anyone I had ever met. He attracted me not only with his appearance, but also with the way he talked. He was always listening, understanding, and offering insightful opinions. At first, we were just friends. Our friendship began naturally through group discussions or when he helped me with some tricky math problems. Andrei was always patient in explaining things, and his eyes lit up when I finally understood the problem. His dedication and enthusiasm impressed me, and I found myself looking forward to his visits to study or just chat. Then one day I noticed my heart beating faster every time I saw him. It was a strange feeling, both nervous and sweet, something I had never experienced before. But I wasn't sure if Andrei felt anything, and I didn't dare say anything. Our relationship would probably have remained at the I was in the kitchen with my grandmother when she suddenly asked me if I had a boyfriend. She said, "You're a grown girl. You have to think about it." I was confused and didn't know how to answer. I didn't want to upset her, but I also didn't want to tell her the truth, that I still hadn't found anyone special. In my confusion, I blurted out the name Andrei. My grandmother was really excited and wanted to meet my boyfriend straight away. I had to go to Andrei. I was really nervous, and my face was red and my voice was low. I told her that you're my boyfriend and she wants to meet you. I thought he might refuse, but instead Andrei just laughed and nodded. He said he was happy to do it as long as I didn't make him act too well. So we performed the perfect play together. Andrei came to my house with a polite and calm demeanor. Andrei was great. He really pleased my grandmother and he surprised me too. He was so natural, I even forgot it was just a play. My grandmother was really happy and kept nodding and praising Andrei while I sat next to him. I felt a strange warmth in my heart. When Andrei left, he turned to me and smiled. He said, "I've completed my role, but it seems like your grandmother really likes me." I didn't know what to say. From that day on, our relationship changed. There were things that didn't need to be said, but I felt that between us, an invisible string was gradually tightening, making it impossible for both of us to go back to the way it was before. I thought that after the drama of meeting my grandmother, everything between Andrei and me would return to the way it was, the relationship of close friends. But right after that meeting, everything began to change. I vaguely felt it was too late one night, Andre. He invited me to a small restaurant where soft yellow lights shone on the worn wooden tables. He ordered a few glasses of wine and we chatted as usual, but this time there was a different atmosphere between us. It was closer, but also full of hidden meaning. Andre smiled an unpredictable smile and looked at me with a penetrating gaze, making me feel my heart beat faster. After dinner, Andre didn't take me home like usual. Instead, he suggested, "Let's go somewhere for a while." I thought, okay, let's do this. I wanted to thank you for helping me play my role perfectly in front of my grandmother. I didn't think much about it, I just nodded in agreement. We arrived at a small hotel where the dim lights gave the space a cozy yet private atmosphere. I don't remember exactly what happened next, but I know that when the door closed, I crossed a boundary that I had never thought of before. It was my first experience of something that was both painful and strange, to the point of being difficult to describe. I felt like I was being pulled into a whole new world where my emotions, instincts, and curiosity merged into a tornado with no way out. Although my heart was trembling and my mind was confused, my body seemed to betray my reason. After that night, I realized that Andre and I had formed a strong relationship that I couldn't refuse. We weren't lovers, he'd never said he loved me and I'd never had the courage to ask, but every time I met him, I felt something. His eyes, his smile, the way he whispered enchanting words in my ear made me unable to resist. Andre was a complex man, mysterious, confident and attractive. He was like a fire, both warming and burning me at any moment. Even though I knew that this relationship had no destination, still couldn't stop myself from rushing into it like a moth, becoming both infatuated and tormented by my own unnamed emotions. The ambiguous relationship with Andre lasted throughout my college years, like an undercurrent that swept me away. In a way that even I couldn't understand, we kept seeing each other, still caught up in an unnamed attraction. But the connection never became clear or lasting. I lived in a contradiction, both attracted and feeling empty when he left without any promises. Then one day I met Mikey. He appeared in my life like a gentle breeze, bringing with him a peace that I had never felt before. Mel was completely different from Andre. He was gentle, thoughtful, and especially a firm believer in Russian Orthodox Christianity. Perhaps it was this contrast that attracted me to him in the first place. Mikey never rushed me, never pressured me, or made me feel like I had to try to be someone else. He always respected me, from the little things like my personal preferences to the quiet moments I needed to think with a male presence. After a few months of knowing each other, Mikey proposed. To me. It wasn't a flashy proposal with a ring and a speech. I was drawn to Mel from the start. He never rushed me or pressured me to be someone I wasn't. He respected my personal preferences and gave me space to think. I felt like I could finally breathe, let go of my strong shell, and reveal my true self, which was full of cracks and wounds. After a few months, Mel proposed. It wasn't a flashy proposal, but it touched me deeply. He got down on one knee and proposed, with just flowers and music. It was simple and sincere, and it touched me deeply. He said he wanted to build a home where I would never feel lonely again. Those words made me choke up, because I'd been looking for a sense of security and someone who could be my support in life. My wedding with Mal was like a dream come true. I was wearing a pure white dress, standing in front of the altar with flickering candles and the choir singing. His eyes were full of love and trust, making me feel like the whole world was on my side when we exchanged our vows. I truly believed that my life had finally come full circle. Mel was the destination I had always longed for. The man who could bring me the peace I had never known. At that time, I thought that all the pain and chaos of the past belonged to another chapter of my life. A chapter that I was ready to close and enter a new, more complete and happy one. Andre didn't disappear from my life when I went back to work at the company. He kept popping up, like a ghost from my past. At first, it was just passing encounters in the hallways. His eyes were deep and meaningful, piercing the facade I'd built for myself. Then there were short but meaningful conversations and whispers that seemed unintentional but evoked memories I was trying to forget. I kept telling myself this couldn't happen. I was male. My wife, the woman who had given me all the love and trust one had ever craved, but Andre. He was like a smoldering fire every time he appeared. He made my reason waver. I tried to resist. I locked myself in my work and avoided his eyes. I cut off all opportunities to talk. But those efforts quickly disappeared when Andre approached. His deep voice made me lose my way in just one night. In a few drinks, everything I had promised myself became blurred in an instant. All boundaries collapsed. I forgot who I was, and even forgot I was wearing my wedding ring. I crossed the line between right and wrong and rushed into Andre's arms like a lost person looking for salvation. I felt guilty, but unable to pull away. Andre made me feel things I didn't feel with Mel. It was a dangerous attraction. It was as if he held the key to unlocking a part of me that I didn't fully understand. I knew I was playing with fire. I was going deeper and deeper. This forbidden relationship was a step further away from me, the person I truly loved. But Andre's attraction was too strong. It was like a dark wave flooding in, engulfing me, drowning me in both pleasure and fear. I longed and dreaded the day the truth would come out. But I couldn't help but return again and again, as someone cursed by my own choices. A year after our marriage, I gave birth to my first son. It should have been the happiest moment of my life. Looking into his clear eyes, I felt like I was facing the innocence and purity I had lost. He was a part of my Kyle, the epitome of his love for me. But at that moment, a heavy guilt took hold of my heart. I had betrayed him. I had betrayed the family I had dreamed of building. I had wanted a home to erase the pain of the past, but no matter how hard I tried to convince myself that things were different now, I was a mother, and I couldn't continue living in selfishness and mistakes. Andre's attraction was like an invisible string binding me to this forbidden relationship. Every time I saw Mikkel tenderly holding the child, his eyes full of love, I felt myself sinking deeper into the abyss of torment. He deserved all the best, and I carried a secret that, if exposed, would completely destroy the world he had worked so hard to build. I told myself that I had to keep my distance. I wanted to end it all with Andre, but it was never that simple. He was still there, a dark part of my life that I couldn't erase. Every time we met by chance, just a glance was enough to undo all my efforts. I hated myself for not being strong enough to escape temptation, but at the same time I couldn't deny that there was something between me and him that I'd never felt with anyone else, a passion so intense and dangerous that I couldn't resist. I was both a mother and a traitor. I lived in two parallel worlds, each holding a part of me and pulling me in opposite directions. The more I tried to break away from Andre, the more I realized that the bond between us was not just physical attraction. It was something deeper and more powerful, from which I could not completely escape. So I continued to exist in a state of inescapable contradiction, both painful and fascinated by my own mistakes. Every time I entered the church with Ma, I could not help but it felt like I was in front of an invisible court. The soft light from the stained glass windows made everything look solemn and holy, but for me, that light only showed the dark corners of my soul. I stood next to him, listening to his prayers and whispered words of reverence. My heart felt heavy with a sense of unworthiness as I knelt before the altar. I clasped my hands in prayer, my eyes half closed to hide the tears that wanted to fall. I begged. I prayed for forgiveness and for God to wipe away my sins. But deep down I knew that these pleas were just a weak excuse. Andre's betrayals kept repeating themselves like a spiral from which I could not escape. There were long nights when the whole family had fallen asleep, when I lay there eyes wide open in the darkness, thinking about confessing to him. I wanted to tell him everything, to face my sins, to free myself from this oppressive feeling. But then that thought was quickly choked by fear. I was afraid to see the change in his eyes. I was afraid that the truth would erase the love and trust he had given me. I was afraid of losing him, losing the family we had built, losing the man who loved me with all his heart, and losing the little boy I longed to protect from the pain of life. So every time the thought of confessing arose in my heart, I forced myself to swallow it down, burying it deep in my soul. I tried to convince myself that if I kept quiet, I could make amends by loving Mel more and fulfilling my role as a wife and mother. But every time I stood next to him in the church, in the space filled with holiness, I couldn't help but feel like I was being judged by a higher power. I lived in that endless conflict, between the desire to redeem myself and the fear of losing everything. I wondered if God would ever forgive someone like me, someone who betrayed the love and trust of the person he. Looking back on my life, I can see that I made a series of wrong decisions and turns. I wasn't strong enough to resist temptation. I loved my husband and my son, but that love wasn't enough to erase the memories of Andre. They were like scars etched into my mind, unforgettable and only there to remind me. Every time I close my eyes, I still see his face, hear his voice echoing, feel the attraction I could never explain. Those memories are still painful, but there's a fascination that I can't completely shake off. I live between two worlds, one where I try to be the ideal wife and mother, and an underground world filled with broken pieces of the past that I try to bury. I know that I cannot continue to live like this. There are secrets. And the torment has become a burden, suffocating my soul. I can only hope that one day I will be strong enough to escape the ghosts of the past and live a truly pure, honest life, a life no longer torn apart by the struggle between what I have and what I have lost. This is my story, a confession from the bottom of my heart, not to seek forgiveness from anyone, but to find myself again. I write these lines as a way to face my true self. To face up to the mistakes I've made and to hope that, even if only a little, I can start the journey of redemption, not just with the people I love but also with myself. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank those who have listened to my story. Opening up and sharing the dark parts of life isn't easy, but I know that being listened to is a precious thing, and I'm extremely grateful for that. Life is sometimes it's a series of mistakes and regrets, but it's the understanding and empathy from those around us that will help us move forward, no matter how difficult the road ahead is. My story isn't about justifying or asking for forgiveness, but about facing myself. Thanks to your listening, I feel like I've lifted a part of the burden. Thanks for taking the time, patience, and heart to accompany me through each line of confidence. I wish you always find peace and happiness in life.